welcome on in the room. Come on in the room. As we used to sing, there was a song in church back in the day that was along that lines. Come on in the room, talking to the Lord. Come on in my room. And so we invite you to come on into this space. This is a sacred space because we say it is. It's a sacred space because we believe it is. It's a sacred space because we consecrate it with our pure presence that we know we are. Already, welcome to Midweek Connection. I'm so glad that you're here, and you're going to be glad that you're here. This Dow verse 64 is fantastic, which I tend to say that this is one of my favorites, and yet I say that about all 81 of them. However, one of the most popular quotes of Taoism and of the Tao that is known by most people around the world comes out of this particular verse, and we will get to that in just a moment. It's one of the most popular sayings. But before we go there, before we get into that space and get into the study of Tao 64, I want to remind you that this Saturday we're going to be at Thistle Farms in Nashville, Tennessee. We will be celebrating our Thanksgiving gathering together in the Music City, and you're invited to come and be a part of that. Please invite someone else to come and be with you. There's a limited amount of seats for that event, but we're just going to say that the right people, the people who are supposed to be there, will be there in that space this Saturday. The information, the address is on the flyer that's on Facebook. It'll be reposted again over the next couple of days. It's also in our chat group on Facebook, so it's available to you. But it's Thistle Farms, and I believe that's on Charlotte's Pike. The address doesn't readily come to me, but I'll make sure I put it in the GPS myself. You're invited to be there, and we're supporting their outreach. We're supporting their charity work, where they are boots on the ground, rescuing people from very tremendously terrible situations. And we are renting the room from them. We're also purchasing our food, coffee, tea, things like that are going to be served during the event. That all goes back to them. Everything that we're doing is a purchase from them so that it helps their ministry, their outreach there. My friend Phoenix Mendoza, formerly a part of the Music Mafia of Nashville. He is a wonderful singer and a songwriter, fun guy. He's going to be sharing some music with us. And I told him, I said, hey man, a couple of songs, but if you're feeling the groove, go for it. So Phoenix is going to be our guest musician. I'll play some music and do some singing myself. Reverend Ray Wiggins, who I met at Unity of Nashville a few years ago when I was there as the music director. He is going to be with us as well. He's going to share with us the energy circle at the end of the session. And I'm so happy to see Reverend Ray once again, still kicking along and doing his thing. I mean, he's been in this earth suit of his for a long time, and he is kicking it, y'all. He's so full of energy, vitality, and you're going to love him. He is a very loving individual. So excited about that. Also, don't forget, those who are in Alabama or anywhere close to Alabama and want to be with us in Birmingham, we are doing our in-person service at the Clubhouse on Highland again this week. It was so wonderful last week. It's going to be great again this week. From what I understand, we are going to have a light yoga session presented a few minutes before our service. We're also going to have a wonderful vegetarian and vegan meal and snacks time together, fellowship time together after the service. It's so wonderful. That team has jumped in, headlong in Birmingham. And Bob McKinnon is so wonderfully allowing us to use the Clubhouse for these sessions, and he's all in too. It's all love. It's all consciousness. It's all love and consciousness. It's one love, Spirit Center gathering together in that space, 10 o'clock on Sundays, on Sunday, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. Now, that does not mean that we're not going to have a live stream. We will have a live stream, but the live stream is going to be what we record on Saturday for our Thanksgiving gathering for folks who are abroad and not able to be with us in person. You'll be able to participate with Phoenix Mendoza being recorded doing music, and Reverend Ray, of course, being recorded doing the energy circle toward the end. So I want to make sure everybody can participate in that, even people who are not able to join us locally. in the place. Let's take a few moments, if you would, and center ourselves into this space. And we enter this space saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. We enter this space with a sense of gratitude and thanksgiving. We know that we are blessed beyond measure. We know that we are loved unconditionally, that the source and the force from which all living beings come loves us without condition, causes it to rain on the just and the unjust. So feel that love right now. Allow yourself to be filled with the love that is divine nature. And now send love to someone that comes to mind right now. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they're down on their luck, going through a hard time, a challenge. Just bring them to mind in this moment and send them this same loving awareness, knowing that we're all created in the likeness and the image of the divine nature, and that there's no distance in this powerful energy of spirit presence that we all have. We send that love energy out to these individuals that you love and care for. And we also send out these same kind of vibrations, the same frequency to those who seem to oppose us. And we say we love you too. And we are thankful in this moment for the part that each individual plays in our life. And we say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And so it is. What a beautiful day. And our wonderful meditations. I mean, it's really just been, it's been a great last several weeks. It's always good, but it's been extra good. I don't know if you've noticed that or felt that, but for me, I felt that it's extra good over the last 2 or 3 weeks. There's just a real powerful synergy, I think, being built. I think we're all recognizing coming into our divine nature, and we're recognizing the powerful beings that we are. And when we combine that energy into the same space, woo, that's what we used to call in the church anointing. It is an anointing. It is an energy that's undeniable. And I'm so thankful that we all get to share that together. Looking at Tao verse 64. If you have your Tao with you, and if you're living the Tao, you get to the place where you don't have to have the book with you. You just know that you're living the Tao, and that's the presence that you are, and it's the presence that we all are, and we're all in that presence together. I love this verse of the Tao. And let's read Stephen Mitchell's translation. And if I was going to title this evening's look at the Tao, just to kind of get our heads pointed in that direction, our minds, I would title this Living Ahead of the Curve. Somebody say, I am living ahead of the curve. All right. Tao verse 64 says, what is rooted is easy to nourish. What is recent is easy to correct. What is brittle is easy to break, and what is small is easy to scatter. Prevent trouble before it arises. Put things in order before they exist. The giant pine tree grows from a tiny sprout. And this is the verse, or a quote from this verse that is seen a lot. You'll see it online when you type in Tao. The journey of 1,000 miles starts from beneath your feet. Or you'll see another translation that'll say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Rushing into action, you fail. Trying to grasp things, you lose them. Forcing a project to completion, you ruin what was almost ripe. Therefore, the master takes action by letting things take their own course. He remains as calm at the end as at the beginning. He has nothing, thus nothing to lose. What he desires is non-desire. What he learns is to unlearn. He simply reminds people of who they have always been. He cares about nothing but the Tao. Thus, he can care for all things. Can I get a witness? Somebody. Now, one of the disturbing lines for this for some people is he cares about nothing but the Tao. I love how Stephen Mitchell in the back of the book kind of shares his own thoughts about it. He cares about nothing but the Tao, which is not to say that he doesn't love his wife, his children, friends, country, planet, but he sees them in the proper perspective of eternity. And since he and his wife love the Tao even more than they love each other, their marriage is radiant and full of love. This is the meaning of the biblical verse, "You shall love the unnamable, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength." To say I really only care about the Tao is to actually say I'm able to love the people that I say I love even more than I would without loving the Tao, because the Tao is the way by which all of that happens. And so that was just a little explanation of that. But let's look at this, because I wanted to title this evening's chat, "Living Ahead of the Curve." I want to read it from a little different translation here that I found online. "Stillness is easy to maintain. What has not yet emerged is easy to prevent. The brittle is easy to shatter. The small is easy to scatter. Solve it before it happens. Order it before chaos emerges. A tree is wide as a man's embrace, grows from a tiny shoot. A tower of 9 stories starts with a pile of dirt. A climb of 800 feet starts where the foot stands. Those who act will fail. Those who seize will ultimately lose. So the sage does not act and therefore does not fail, does not seize and therefore does not lose. People fail at the threshold of success too often. Be as cautious at the end as at the beginning. Then there will be no failure. Therefore the sage desires no desire, does not value rare treasures, learns without learning, recovers what people have left behind. He wants all things to follow their own nature, but dares not act." Now, there's so many things we could look at here. First of all, I'll take us back to something that I share quite often. Every force creates a counterforce. Whatever you try to grasp is going to move through your grasp. Ultimately, it will let go. If you try to hold your breath, nature will prevail. You will faint and start breathing whether you like it or not. Whatever you try to force is going to push back against you. What you resist will persist in your life. So it's about surrender. It's about giving in to the natural flow. So it's saying that the sage, one who begins to master living this human expression through a Tao mind, is one who wants everything to unfold in its natural way and stops judging what is as it is. It just accepts what is as it is. Can I get a witness? Somebody. So if we learn to accept things as they are, in that acceptance, there's a magical release and letting go. So I don't have to be in the prison of controlling anything or anyone. I can just live my natural unfolding, and you can too. Let me move toward a couple of thoughts that I wrote down as I meditated on this Tao verse. There seem to be 3 steps to enlightenment that most people choose. The first is enlightenment through suffering, and let me say this about enlightenment through suffering. Although it tends to be the one we choose, I know that I've chosen it too often in my life. Enlightenment through suffering is overrated, but many choose that, enlightenment through suffering. The second form is being in the present moment, enlightenment through being in the present moment when a crisis arises. In other words, people who have moved on and graduated, matured in their Tao mind will be present or in the present moment when a crisis arises, and they'll start saying to themselves things like, I know there's a gift in this. I know it's going to unfold perfectly. I know it's going to be okay. I know there's a blessing and a lesson in this situation. That is Tao-minded. That mindset that says, I'm going to stay in the present moment during this crisis. But let me say this about that. I know there's a gift in the situation, and I'm going to look for it. I'm going to remain in the present moment. This is more Tao-minded, of course, but it's not quite what Lao Tzu is getting at in this particular verse. Here's where I think there's a difference in being Tao-minded and being a master of Tao living. Okay, so our mindset is shifting. Many of us have already shifted to this mindset. We've heard Papa Jim, as I call him, Dad Jim Murphy, talk about the peace that came, and now he lives through this sense of peace. We're all shifting. We're allowing our mindsets to shift. But here's where I invite us to get to, and this is something that sprung up in the midst of the meditation. In fact, I had walked away from the verse, just not even really thinking about it, and it dawned on me. Boom, it was like one of those momentary, wow, hold on a second. I thought really there would be two levels of enlightenment or two ways to it, and that is, and I've mentioned to you before, it's through suffering for some, but I like the idea of being able to get ahead of the curve, and this really unfolded in my mind. The third way to enlightenment, or the third step to enlightenment, is being ahead of the curve. This is why I wanted the title this evening, Living Ahead of the Curve. It's being ahead of the curve. It's seeing crisis coming before it does and heading it off at the pass. It's seeing problems arising before they actually do and heading them off, getting ahead of the problems and the challenge before it ever even happens. It's seeing the crisis, heading it off. It's getting out in front of it so that it never has to become a crisis. Notice that that's a portion of the scripture that says, the small is easily scattered. If you catch a situation that is small, a small challenge or problem, if you catch it in that small state, it's easier to push it aside or to deal with it. If you let it grow, because notice in the verse, and I'll take us back to Stephen Mitchell's version. I like how his reads this way. Notice it says that, let me look at it and see, prevent trouble before it arises, put things in order before they exist. The giant pine tree grows from a tiny sprout. What he's trying to relay there is this very idea, to get ahead of the curve. He's talking about when problems are starting to, when you've planted the seed, right? Eventually you'll have to pull the weeds, or you'll have to deal with the tree that grows from it. But did you know that there's a way to dig the seed up? There's a way to head the problem off at the pass and not allow a slight challenge to become a crisis in your life. And I believe that's a huge part of really growing, getting to the place where instead of, and I'll say it this way, let me say it this way, healing is fantastic. But perfect, consistent health is even better. Healing is fantastic, but consistent health is better. Problem solving is fantastic. However, getting ahead of the curve and having less problems is even better than solving problems. So many times we've built our minds toward action and reaction, or what's the thing that I used to say all the time about cause and effect. We've allowed ourselves to believe in cause and effect instead of causing an effect. And causing an effect is moving ahead of the game. See, this is one of the reasons that I have a list of affirmations. I have things that I declare over my life. And I have changed some of my habits because I knew that I realized what I was practicing was becoming a habit, and I was building that kind of a habitat, and I got tired of building that same kind of house. And so I decided to get ahead of the curve, to shift, change the habits, move toward a more positive mindset. Instead of thinking in terms of I'm going to struggle or it'll be hard to do, Say to yourself, it's not going to be hard to change my life. It's not going to be hard to find the right life partner that suits me, that suits my life, and that I suit their life. It is not going to be a struggle for me to make my dream fulfilled. It's not going to be a struggle for me to have abundance in finances. It's not going to be a struggle for me to find a healthier pathway for my body. Instead of thinking in terms of struggle, get ahead of it. And instead of planting seeds for a problem, plant the seeds for a life of fulfillment. So number one, over the next few days, ponder the influential line in the Tao verse that says, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Forget about the end result. When you arrive where you thought you wanted to be, you'll just begin a new journey. So just enjoy the journey. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But even when you arrive, whatever the destination may be, then what? The first guy who climbed Mount Everest got to the top of Mount Everest and then ended up in a depression for the next 6 months. Because it was like, now what? All of his anticipation was on getting to the peak, and it never was enjoying each step along the way. And so he missed the most important part of it. And it's the journey. So find a way to slow down and smell the coffee, smell the roses, put your feet in the sand or in the water and your butt in the sand. And find a way to enjoy the journey. And so, number one, ponder that line that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And just take that one step toward opening that business you wanted to open, or going back to school, or allowing yourself to step out and believe that just because your heart was broken before doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever love again. Number two, become a master anticipator. Decide today that you are perfectly capable of preventing trouble from cropping up in your life before it manifests into the material world. Become a master anticipator. In fact, somebody write that, if you would, in the comments. I choose to be a master anticipator. In other words, I'm going to allow my intuition and the flow of the Tao to flow through me so much that I will be able to see clearly off in the distance the storm before it even arrives. You know, that's what an eagle does. An eagle can actually see a storm coming over 100 miles away. And before the storm gets there, it soars above it. It is a master anticipator. And they that wait upon the Lord, or the unnameable, shall renew their strength and mount up with wings. I just did the Napoleon Dynamite. Mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not faint. Yeah. Become a master anticipator. Be conscious, and here's a for instance for that. Be conscious of your own health instead of waiting until health problems manifest in the material world. Be conscious of it ahead of time. Practice intentionally setting a new nutrition habit in place. I'll give you, for instance, a friend of mine not too long ago mentioned that, and I thought this was a wonderful way of dealing with it. He had a drinking problem, and he decided it's not good for me to continue drinking as much as I do, so he decided to stop drinking. Well, he got to going okay for a couple of days, and then he binged. He was drunk for like 2 days. He said, man, it was worse. And he said, I just really didn't know what to do. He said, I kept telling myself, I've drank for the last 15 years, heavy. It's time for me to stop drinking for the rest of my life. He said, and then it dawned on me, wait, I don't need to worry about 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 2 years from now, a year from now, a month from now. I don't even need to worry about a week from now. I need to decide every day that today I choose to not drink. Now think about that just a moment. Today I choose to not drink. It reminds me of scripture again in the Bible that says that he gives manna every day. And in the Psalms, David said his mercies are new every morning. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. The journey of bringing yourself into health consciousness in every way begins with one step. Not deciding I'm not going to drink for a week, or I'm not going to drink for the rest of my life. I quit, or I quit smoking, or I quit doing whatever it is that you feel like is a habit in your life that you want to shift. One step, one day at a time. So I challenge you to take one habit on that you'd like to see removed from your life. Decide one day at a time that you'll no longer be a slave to that particular habit. Do it one day at a time. Don't say to yourself, I'll never do it again. I'm telling you, it's dangerous for you to say that to yourself, because then the self's going to be like, well, I'll show you. Don't say to yourself, I'll never do that again. Just decide daily to not do it for today. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So, living life ahead of the curve. That's what I get from Dow, verse 64. Can I get a witness? Somebody. All right.